Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we're gathered on the traditional lands of Treaty 7 and that Banff National Park also covers Treaty 6 and 8. These lands are home to the Earhare Nakota Nations, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney, the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation, the Métis Nation of Alberta, and many others whose stories and connections to this place run deep. As someone who is so fortunate to call this place home, I recognize that the ability to live, work, and enjoy these incredible landscapes comes from a history that has had real impact on Indigenous peoples through displacement, loss of access, and broken relationships. We're grateful to be here today, and we carry a responsibility to keep learning, to listen to Indigenous voices, and to do our part in building relationships that honor both the land and the people who've always been its caretakers. Welcome to Between Peaks, the podcast where we explore the people, ideas, and stories shaping life in the Bow Valley. I'm Nancy Dadalt. Today we're looking at the work that happens behind the scenes to keep our community strong, the funding, the partnerships, and the people who help local organizations thrive. Our guest is Cathy Geisler, Executive Director of the Women Nancy Pauw Foundation, a longtime volunteer and a longtime friend, and community leader whose work sits at the intersection of impact and connection. Cathy's leadership focuses on strengthening local life, building capacity. She's always seeking opportunities and helping to help the Bow Valley continue to grow and thrive. In this episode, we explore what real impact looks like in action, how collaboration fuels community success, and what it takes to sustain the people behind the work. The Pauw Foundation connects our community through projects like the Nancy Pauw Pedestrian Bridge, education, and initiatives that expand access to community needs and mountain recreation for residents. Together, we'll unpack the nonprofit world and talk about how generosity, partnership, and shared responsibility can build a stronger Bow Valley for everyone. Welcome, Cathy. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Nancy. It's great to be here. Thanks for the lovely introduction.
Let's start with the basics, because I'm not sure everybody knows. How did the Women Nancy Pauw Foundation start? And I guess, how did it come to be?
Sure. Great question. So the Women Nancy Pauw Foundation is a private foundation centered here in Banff and the Bow Valley. And how it came to be is a pretty cool story. So Wim Pauw is the founder of the funder and founder of the foundation, I guess. And in the late 60s, early 70s, Wim came from his home country, Holland. He moved to Canada. Always an adventurer.
Immigrated to Canada.
Always an adventurer. Wim was between jobs, and he was moving from the north, as the story goes, down to Panama for his next work opportunity. And he stopped off in Banff, fell in love with the mountains, and like many, many of us here in the Bow Valley, never left. Wim started his hospitality career in working as a front desk agent at the YWCA. He was staying there at the hostel. When he arrived here, he worked as a lift operator at the gondola. And eventually he was working for an electrical company. He apprenticed as an electrician and over time acquired the electrical company. As he was doing work in the Bow Valley, he was working in hotels and commercial buildings and realized there was some opportunity. And so his company, Banff Caribou Properties, evolved and owns some commercial real estate, but also owns a number of hotels, restaurants, and spas, mostly here in Banff and Canmore. So he built his successful hospitality company, and as he was evaluating, he credits his late wife, Nancy, with challenging him to determine what he was going to do, what his legacy was going to be, what his succession planning looked like, and what he was going to do with his good fortune. And so out of that came the Women Nancy Pauw Foundation, and it came through a real sincere and authentic desire to give back to the community where he feels fortunate to have raised his family and made a good living and ridden his bike lots. So Banff Caribou Properties has sort of adopted a philosophy of, keeping the Bow Valley, keeping Banff in Banff. And so they have 3 reinvestment pillars. And one is reinvestment in tourism products. So hotels, renovating hotels, developing hotels and restaurants that are of high quality and good service, reinvesting in employees. So through creative employee benefit programs, like we have a home loan program and an employee share ownership program. And then the third pillar of reinvestment is through the Women at Pauw Foundation, and it's reinvestment really giving back tourism dollars going right back into community initiatives. So that's how it came to be. It's a pretty cool story.
I was telling a friend yesterday on a walk that we were doing this, and she said, "Oh my gosh, tell them thank you. My children we're so lucky to be able to participate in so many more sports at school because of the Pauw Foundation." And you hear that story over and over again. And I remember even before the foundation really became solid, the ski program with Norquay, all of our kids were able to ski because of that.
Yeah, yeah. And if you remember, Nancy, back in 2013, you were working for Banff Canmore Foundation. And the very first investment, the very first donation that we made, we have a picture of myself presenting you with a check. And it was a check for a donation for rebuilding trails after the 2013 floods. And it was to Banff Canmore Foundation. And Banff Canmore Foundation was working with parks and other organizations so anyway,
we were up on the roof of the building.
We were Caribou Properties there.
Wow. Full circle, Cathy.
Here we are again.
Strong communities just don't happen. They're built through partnership and diverse sources of funding. Why is philanthropy such a vital piece of that puzzle, especially here in a place like the Bow Valley?
Like many communities, but especially here, as you say, in the Bow Valley, there's a lot of diversity. There's a wide range of people and different networks of communities. There's a lot of diversity in socioeconomic status. There's a lot of diversity in, stage of life where people are at. There's young families, there's, young transient workers, there's middle managers, there's seniors in our community, and there's diversity in how we build our communities of support. If you think of the solo traveler that comes and lands here that doesn't know anybody, again, you think of a young mom who doesn't have their family network maybe from home here, and so philanthropy is important because there's not one single solution for supporting all the needs that a diverse community has. Income doesn't always meet the needs of affordability here in the Bow Valley. Tax dollars, government-funded social services only stretch so far. And philanthropy can really fill a need, it can fill gaps, and it can create opportunities. So whether that's, supporting, enhancing, or providing for the many different organizations that are doing really meaningful work in our community, there's so much need and so much opportunity for philanthropy.
And the Pauw Foundation is a classic example of philanthropy. Someone who's had success here in the community and wanting to give that back.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And there's a strong web of philanthropy and, there's a place for everybody, I guess, to be involved. It takes a village. There really is truth to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And philanthropy can look different things, your time, some money, or even your knowledge. So
For sure.
Listeners might hear that the Pauw Foundation has committed funding here to the Banff Canmore Foundation, and they may not understand how it connects. Can you help explain how a private foundation like the Pauw Foundation works with a community foundation like here at the Banff Canmore Foundation?
Sure. I guess I would say, to that comment that it takes a village and there's space for everybody. We're really closely aligned with Banff Canmore Foundation, and we really rely on the work that Banff Canmore Foundation does, maybe from a higher level, a bigger picture. So they do work in, working with vital signs. They do a vital signs project where they're digging in a little bit deeper to some of the community issues that maybe that's doing research, maybe that's convening conversations with experts or people, that are working in the fields to address. It could be anything from housing, Indigenous relations, food insecurity. So they're building a collaborative network to sort of evaluate issues. They have some grant cycles. and they're working on building the philanthropic network. So they're working out with all types of donors and resources around the Bow Valley and beyond. They work closely with Calgary Foundation, for example. And so we really want to support that work, and we spin off of that work. And so maybe they have knowledge that they're bringing. Maybe there's a group that's looking for funding, and Banff Canmore Foundation doesn't have the right pot of funding or the right grant cycle coming up. They may refer somebody to us. Maybe we're meeting with somebody that has a need that's bigger than what we can address, or that needs resources that Banff Canmore Foundation can provide. So Lori and I talk all the time, and we meet on a regular basis, and we're always, scheming and dreaming about how to collectively lift the not-for-profit sector. It's really just about communication. It's about bringing together stakeholders to understand the work that's happening, and again, how we can just support it. And the Pauw Foundation, we work one-on-one with some organizations, but and we encourage all organizations to work collaboratively or to evaluate partnerships. If I'm feeding the people, then maybe there's other organizations that
Maximizing resource.
maximizing resources. How the Homelessness Society works with the food insecurity organizations and such. And the Banff Canmore Foundation really is a hub for all those conversations. It's really a central point. And so we're very, very closely aligned with what they do. And we're happy to support them with some capacity building as they're growing their endowments, and as they're growing their team so they can do this important work. We're happy to support them that way. And sometimes it's as simple as when they may be looking at a grant cycle. And again, there might be an organization whose needs are a little bit bigger than what the grant capacity allows for.
Right.
Then maybe we'll lean in and say, this is important work for us. Maybe we can, match some funding or to help get a grant across the line. So that's an example of, how we work together.
Yeah. And again, teamwork, and it takes a village. And to be able to understand what else is going within the community.
Absolutely.
All of us having these different pods of knowledge and information.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I just get so excited seeing that in action.
So working.
When you look at the work you're supporting, from education, housing to recreation and well-being, what do you see as the most important levers for real, lasting community impact?
I have a lot of levers. I don't know that I can prioritize them, but it's spinning off of what we were just talking about. It's working together. It's building trust-based relationships, which really comes with honesty and transparency, checking competitiveness at the door, and really understanding that when we're working together for the greater good, we'll lift further. I won't try and do the boats floating analogy because I never get it right. But I think it's about listening to the needs and the feedback and the knowledge from the people who are living the lives and doing the work. There's so many people that are running organizations with passion and knowledge and experience, and they really know what they need. I think it's trusting that the Bow Valley can create innovative solutions that are born, made in the mountains solutions that really work for our population, striving for that. And I think that when all those pieces come together, ultimately, probably the most important lever is how we can work towards big solution changes. So it's one thing to keep feeding people, but it's another thing to figure out how to build the greenhouses, as an example.
Great
right?
analogy.
So how do we keep focused on addressing the bigger challenges and
Address immediate needs and then looking to the future to eliminate or...
And it's all happening at once. You can't do one without the other, I guess. I think housing is a great example. There's a lot of momentum now on housing, and that's because there's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of creative people thinking about it. There's, again, back to diverse funding supports. It's an example where you tackle it from all angles, and you feel like you can start to make momentum towards big system changes. So.
And do you have a formula in terms of what areas you focus on, or is that depending on where the greatest need is at that time? And
no, we don't have a formula. I think, one of the ways that we're probably unique from maybe more traditional funders is that we we have a strong coffee table culture, both in Banff Caribou Properties, and we've adopted that over in the foundation. So pretty much anybody, almost anybody in the Bow Valley that has a need or an idea that meets, small eligibility, I guess, we're interested in talking to and understanding more what they're doing. We might not align with every opportunity right away, but we feel that being part of the conversations, we challenge people to dream big. So it's not just about what issue are you facing today. It's about, what would you do if money wasn't a barrier, I guess. And so we use a lot of intuition. We not only do we meet with our recipients or not-for-profit sector at the coffee table, but we meet as a board at the coffee table. So there's different opinions that come to the table. And so no, I don't have a definitive answer for that, but we're willing to talk to almost anybody, and we just tend to know some organizations, they're a little bit more grassroots. Other organizations are bigger, they have lots of structure and policy and everything behind them, and they're more equipped to sort of take donations that are, maybe less contained or have less constraints around them. So as opposed to just funding a program, maybe we're funding operational needs, and we trust the organization is ready to use it as they see fit.
Well, and it's great as a private foundation to be nimble that way, and to be able to see what is needed right now and still look to the future. For people that are listening who may not think of themselves as philanthropists, why does this work matter to them?
Well, the work matters to everybody. You don't know, as an individual, you don't know maybe something that your coworker's going through. You don't know maybe what your neighbor is facing. And so it's just, I think the work of community matters to everybody because, again, we're all in it together. And you never know when you might be facing a need or you might be facing an opportunity that you can have impact with. And so the outcome of the work, as you said, it's the mom who is maybe working 2 or 3 jobs and is worrying over whether the kid can go skiing with the class. When private dollars or philanthropic dollars can come in and just eliminate that financial barrier, like the stress that alleviates is quite significant. And so those pieces are important. And then, from the overall perspective of philanthropy, I think it's important to know that everybody can be a philanthropist, every single person. And it might be from, it maybe is your volunteer commitment to read for an hour at the school. That's philanthropy. It might be dropping clothing off at the thrift store so that other people can use it. That's philanthropy. It's not always about writing a check. It's really about showing up on a committee, volunteering.
Yeah. I think that whole idea of it's not always about writing a check is so important, that no matter who you are or where you are in your stage of life, that you can give back to your community, whatever that may look like.
Yeah. It's involvement, it's participation, it's caring, it's baking a banana bread. For your neighbor.
Yeah. And what about organizations? What about organizations, big or small, that are thinking about creating a fund or even their own private foundation? What advice would you give them as they contemplate this idea based on all the work that you have done with the Pauw Foundation?
I would say do your homework, but it's not tough homework. It's calling us for a coffee. I am happy to sit and chat with anybody about philanthropy or, and there's lots of levels of philanthropy and there's lots of different approaches. Some people like to be completely anonymous, but look for a place to give. Other people, everybody has it. Some people don't want to have administrative, costs or anything. Some people want to meet with everybody. Other people don't want to meet with anybody. So ultimately, it's asking questions. But probably the most important piece I would say is stop by the Banff Canmore Foundation.
Yes.
Because they're doing the work. They're talking to the people. They have the professional resources, and they have the framework. They have opportunities to invest through the Banff Canmore Foundation, and then they'll do the work for you at giving your money back. They know how to bring collaborative dollars together or have individual donor advised funds where you can be as involved or not as you want.
They can leverage
your commitment. So I would say, here in the Bow Valley, stop in and have a coffee with somebody and ask the questions. And don't be shy, don't be intimidated by, people can get a little bit intimidated by, the paperwork or the filing with the government and such. But it's when you start having conversations, it's work, but it's the outcome of the good work that you're going to do, far outweighs the administrative burden of getting started.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be a burden, especially partnering with here at the Banff Canmore Foundation.
Yeah.
What keeps you inspired when this work gets heavy or uncertain?
The work does get heavy. Yeah. Sometimes you feel like it takes a lot longer than you want it to take, or I can be impatient sometimes, for sure. What keeps me inspired is the people in the trenches, the people that show up every day to run a class or, start these really important organizations with nothing but their own energy and their own vision, and then they bring a friend in and then they bring another friend in and then they get really excited and somebody says, hey, you should apply for a grant, and they get their first grant. And in the meantime, they're still working full time, but they're doing the things. They're pulling people together. Like connection and belonging is just words that come up more and more in community, that people are looking for these places where they connect. And there's so many pockets of groups that are gathering to do this work. So it's just so important. And that's what inspires me, because people, they just keep going. They're resilient. Again, they have this vision and they stay pointed on it, and they just keep working towards it. And overcoming barriers to deliver good for people. So how can you not be inspired?
Right. Well, it's sort of impact and action is what you're talking about. And can you give me an example of what that really looks like in the Bow Valley? You've touched on a few things.
Sure. Impact in action, I guess, is the Pauw Foundation. If I want to sit there for a second, it's Wim recognizing that he has, all these profits earned from tourism, and action is investing it back into community.
Great example.
I think it's,
It's tourism for good.
It's tourism for good. Yeah. I think it's the, I used the reference earlier, but it's the housing group working with the food insecurity group, the shelter people working with the Y working with the pride societies. It's this network of people that they're not staying in silos. They're opening their doors and they're saying, how can we impact?
They're linking arms.
They're linking arms. It's the wise work with the tourism industry to really bring the issue of sexual violence and gender-based violence, which is real in our community, but to bring it to light. It's
not just leaving it under the carpet,
but not leaving it under the carpet, and not just keeping it as a why issue, that they serve these people. It's opening the conversation to say, we need to be working on this together. We need to be talking about, it's recognizing that residents benefit from resources that are, labeled for visitors, and that visitors benefit from having a healthy resident community. It's all these conversations, and it's really breaking down the fences a little bit, and just realizing, prioritizing that we're all in it together. Yeah. This is impact and inaction. Yeah.
And I think too, part of that impact and action is all of the small pockets working together is a superpower.
It is a superpower.
Because we're not a big city and that we run into each other on the street or we're on the bus to Canmore together, it gives us a chance to really make it more a greater connection together.
Yeah. I don't know if you see I'm sure you do, but out in community, like in Banff, we have the Big Red Ride, and in Canmore, they have, similar Pedal for Joy, I think it's called. And, again, one person, one vision, one issue about people aging and mobility. And now, like, nothing brings me more joy than when I see that bike out. And again, it's stored somewhere because somebody reached out to somebody, and it's used by the hospital, by the physio people for long-term care. It's used over at Cascade House to get people out biking. It's used at Origins, and like it just brings me joy. I'll be waiting for the bus in Canmore and I'll see the bike go, and I just think, wow, like that is impact.
Yeah. Yeah. Same experience going down Vermilion Lakes Road. Yeah. And then you're cheering them on. Yes.
And they're happy. And they haven't ridden bikes, some of them, for years. There's a person that lost their sight and couldn't ride their bike anymore. And they just felt so free the first time they got on that bike. It's magic.
It's like being a kid all over again. That first time you get on a bike.
Yeah.
Cathy, as we close, if you could leave our listeners with one message, what would you want to leave them with?
Oh, that's a hard one. I thought I had an answer for this one. Get involved sounds so simple, but really listen to the podcast, read the blog, ask a question. When you stop by Food and Friends, for example, and have a meal, and just see that operation, and see, connect with a community member there that you haven't met with before. And just realize that there's a lot that happens between the peaks that you don't realize, but it's driven by real heartful people who are our neighbors, who are our friends, and are just really committed to a good community. So just keep asking questions. Pop by the Pauw Foundation, not to, promote, but they're just doing really great work. And there's a lot of meaningful work in our valley. We have so many great resources, and we're all here because we choose to be. And we talk about, what does a better Banff look like? What does our future look like? What does a stronger Bow Valley look like? And I think the more we talk and converse and ask questions and participate and engage, the stronger we're going to be and the quicker we're going to get there.
And anybody can get involved.
Anybody can get involved.
Fantastic. Okay. Kath, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Nance. It's been fun.
It's really been great. And all the information that you've shared, I'm sure the audience has learned a lot. And I'd just like to thank everybody for listening today and being here, and look forward to joining us at our next episode. Between Peaks was produced and edited by Calder Penny at Farside Films. Executive Director Courtney Babott at Widely Open, and music by Arn Smith. A big thank you to the whole Pauw Foundation team. We also want to thank all of our guests, our volunteers, our funders, and every community member.